Well, we've been monitoring Parliament very, very closely for the last few weeks, reading through the all that paper on a daily basis, because I had a suspicion that Parliament may not be working as it normally would, and my suspicions were proven right. And we started to have a conversation with some of the members of Parliament, and it confirms that they have not seen enough serious government business in the House since Parliament resumed in January. And we wanted to look at this a bit more and have a bigger conversation about why. There are two broad issues that we're beginning to see in Parliament. One is that if you check the order paper, government business that is supposed to be done since January have not been done, and consistently have been procrastinating and being pushed forward, and they're still on the order paper. And the issues are not being dealt with. And then you also begin to see last week that MPs, maybe because of that, have become very lackadaisical about going to Parliament. And so they are missing Parliament because there's really nothing for them to do. Last week, they were forced to adjourn the House because there were simply not enough members in the House to form a quorum. Is this lackadaisical attitude in Parliament, the stall government business, the gridlock, etc.? Is it a result? Is Parliament feeling the effects of the gridlock brought about by the inability to move, this inertia that government is in over the e-levy? Is that what is affecting Parliament and brought on this malaise in the House? Let's delve into this a bit more. That's a conversation we're going to have. This is the People's Parliament, and so it's always important to put a bit of a spotlight on this. We've been tracking it, as I said, the government business. If you look at the order paper, you begin to see the business committee meets, and then they plan the work of the House for the next week. And they say in the other paper what they're going to be dealing with, the business they're going to be dealing with. So the government business is spelled out. If you want to see if government is working, one of the areas to look at is there. Of course, there's a committee work. There you can speak to the members of Parliament themselves. And the members of Parliament are telling us that even committee work is not happening as it should. So we tracked a bit. We tracked from the 1st of March to the 11th of March. This is a period of what? 11 days. But remember that Parliament sits 4 times in a week. So you're talking about this 8-day period, right? And something very interesting began to emerge. There were 4 motions on the 4th of March. If you look at all the 4 motions on the 1st of March that were in the order paper, all of them were repeated on the 11th of March. That tells you something very simple, that these motions that were tabled on the 1st of March for consideration haven't been done. And what we found was that every single day after the 1st March, when Parliament had sat, they copy and paste. It is repeated, and so nothing happens. And it's 11th of March is Friday. That's the last time Parliament sat, just last week Friday, and we begin to see the repetition of the business of the House that they were supposed to deal with. And some of them are very important official government business, right, that they were supposed to deal with. So here are a few of them that had been on the order paper, but nothing has happened about them. Adoption of the investigative report of the Committee on Defense and Interior on the incident of military-civilian brutality in Wa. This is a very important document. It's been on the other paper, repeated for 8 days continuously, and still hasn't been dealt with. We have the House to rescind the decision taken on the 7th of November 2020, loan facility agreement towards the construction of a 40-bed hospital. So you think this is a very important issue that borders on a hospital facility for the people of Ghana, right? And government plans to rescind the decision taken on the 7th of November 2020. It has been on the order paper for 8 days, and no work is happening on this, so they keep repeating it. And then adoption of the reports of the Finance Committee. Again, they haven't done it. It's there on the order paper, repeated and repeated and repeated for 8 days. Adoption of the report of the Committee on Health on the agreement for the construction and equipment of 40-bed district hospitals. Again, government business, it's not happening. Although it's been scheduled and is in the order paper, we've seen it's been repeated over and over again. We need to ask questions why this is on the floor of Parliament. Again, we went back to when Parliament resumed. This is the 25th of January. Parliament returned on the 25th of January, and the last day of sitting was on the 11th of March. Now, something very interesting you begin to see on the screens here. Things as simple as second reading of bills. As you can see, Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2021, it was scheduled to be done on the 25th of January when Parliament began sitting after the break. After the last day of sitting on the 11th of March, it is still there. Same wording, copied from the 25th of March and pasted into the order paper on the 11th of March. So this is a significant length of time, right? That it hasn't happened. That this whole second reading. I mean, how complicated is it to simply bring for reading of a bill, to bring a second reading of a bill on the Supplementary Appropriation 2022? And I need to find out. So the fact that this hasn't happened, has it got any implication for the way government business is done at all? You know, so that's a telling thing, right? Something as simple as second reading on the 25th of March, still on the 11th of March, still hasn't been done. Second reading still not done. Why is that? We'll get into that very shortly. And then it begins to affect, very interestingly, members of Parliament who are, in essence, refusing to go to work. Quorum, according to the Constitution, is 92 MPs must be in the House. This is the constitutional provision of quorum. Quorum of Parliament, apart from the person residing, shall be 1/3 of all members of the House. That is 92 members. You need 92 members to do business. Listen to what happened last week. As of last week, last time Parliament was forced to adjourn. Parliament was forced to stop doing business because there were only 41 MPs in the House. They required 92. We have 271 MPs. Last week, one of the days, only 41 MPs went to the House. The Speaker of Parliament was forced to say, we can't do business. So that day was a holiday for the members of Parliament. Go home, because we don't have enough of you to form a quorum. Only 41 were in the House. They only need 51 more to form a quorum, and they didn't get it. So truncated the House, and people went home. And it appears it's been so for a long time. And the second day, quorum came up again. The member of Parliament raised an issue about the quorum. Again, became controversial. The Speaker, it wasn't really heard. It became controversial. And the matter again was not heard. But on one of the days last week, the Speaker was forced to adjourn this to the next day. Again, so this tells you a story of what the problems really are in Parliament, right? Again, what has Parliament been doing then is the question. So if they are not doing the things they put on the order paper to do, and they've been repeating it, so what really have they been doing then? As we see, they've been answering, we see answering of urgent questions. There's been a lot of this happening. A lot of ministers are coming in to answer questions and go. Several of them. We've seen the Transport Minister. We've seen the Foreign Affairs Minister. So they do that. And then we've seen other things, private, members' actions, other activities, celebrate of International Women's Day. And some of the members of Parliament themselves are complaining that there isn't enough work to do in the House. Listen to Sam George, we spoke to last week, very, very concerned about the state of affairs in the House.
Parliament appears to be at, for want of a better phrase, a standstill. Nothing seems to be going on. There's no government business. The government appears to be in a state of paralysis. There's no government business. Normally, Parliament moves on government business. You realize that basically all we do is we do correction of votes and proceedings. There are a few statements here or there. Absolutely no government business, no referrals to committees. And so the committees are not meeting.
So the committees are not working as well?
I mean, tell me which of the committees are sitting. If the committees will be sitting, it will be on the basis of government business. Okay. At the end of the day, government is what the executive business is what drives Parliament. There's been zilch. I mean, even the president has basically absconded from doing his State of the Nation's address. I mean, I can't remember since 1993. There's nothing. We are doing International Women's Day statement.
You spent about 2 hours on that.
Because there is nothing else to talk about. Of nothing happening. this confused state of the country, where we can't even have a State of the Nation's address, where we don't have government business coming, where government business has come to a standstill.
That is a member of parliament. Government business has come to a standstill, he says. Well, is that really the case, as the evidence has shown? And why is that? I want to bring in my panelists who are joining me tonight. I have with me the member of parliament for North Tong, Samuel Kudeto Ablakwa. I'm grateful for your time here on PM Express. You've had cause to raise the issue of MPs' absenteeism. It's an issue that you've touched on, and you've actually brought it. Last week, I noticed that you actually stood on your feet in Parliament and raised the issue. As we've seen, quorum was an issue. Some of you remember were not in the House, and the House was adjourned. So it's really an issue now. It's affecting the work of Parliament. I wanted to talk about that when I come to you. Also, you see on your screen there, the Deputy Majority Whip, who is joining us right now, Mr. Habib Idris. I'm grateful, Mr. Habib Idris, for your time here on PM Express. Thank you for joining us. Also joining us is great. Also joining us is Dr. Rashid Rahman with the Africa Parliamentary Center. He works very closely with Parliament, and so he knows what I'm talking about. And I wonder what his own thoughts are on this. On the comments. I'm delighted to have all of you. Professor Abdullahi is also joining us right now for a conversation on this. I'm grateful, Professor Abdullahi, David Abdullahi.
Thank you.
For your time here on PM Express. Let me start with you, Samuel Kudeto Ablakwa. We just heard your colleague, Sam George, complain that the government business seems to have come to a halt in the House, and that there's really nothing to do. We've shown some of the effects of this, the repetition of what is on the other paper from the 25th since you came to now. Is this exaggerated, or as a member of Parliament, it's your experience as well?
Well, good evening to you, Evans. Good evening to the panel and to all distinguished viewers across the globe. I mean, these are very legitimate concerns, and I share in the view of the Honorable Sam George. And indeed, if you look at the record, the business statement week after week will confirm that we are having a lot of rollover agenda, which we should really have quickly dispensed with and move to other matters. I have been part of a number of motions that we filed since last year, which should have been taken this year. Very important motions that I'm sponsoring with a number of colleagues. If you take, for example, our motion to ask for a bipartisan parliamentary inquiry into recruitment into the security services, that has been pending since January this year. We are now in March, and look at what we have witnessed recently: the bullion van scandal, where you have police officers who themselves are engaging in robbery. If we had carried out that parliamentary inquiry, full-scale bipartisan inquiry, I'm sure that we probably would have weeded out those bad nuts in the system. That hasn't happened. There's another motion that I co-sponsored with a number of colleagues on the Frontiers Healthcare Services, which is carrying out COVID-19 tests at the Kotoka International Airport. You do recall the scandal with that whole arrangement, the breach of the procurement law, breach of the Fees and Charges Act, breach of the Public Health Act, virtually all laws. And you recall at the vetting, all ministers were running away from that matter. We've carried that matter from last year to this year. We've still not had that probe. There's another motion we filed to probe the use of private charters by the president in his presidential travels. A number of my colleagues and I have been pushing Parliament to go into that matter to find out exactly what is happening to our presidential jet. Why is it that it cannot be used for long-haul travel? And why are we, spending all the millions of Ghana cedis? I estimate that the president has squandered not less than 25 million Ghana cedis since May last year to February this year on these ultra-luxury charters. Again, that is a very important motion we continue to gather dust. So if you look at the record, it is clear. Look, there's another constitutional requirement under Article 67 of the Constitution, the message on the state of the nation. Article 67 is clear. It provides the president shall, at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament, deliver to Parliament a message on the state of the nation. I have been looking at the record, the president's own track record since he was sworn in. In 2017, when he was sworn in, he delivered the message on the state of the nation February 21st, 2017. In 2018, February 8th, 2018. 2019, February 21st, 2019. You come all the way, 2021 was the latest period, which was, that evening it was 9th March 2021. Today is what, the 14th of March? And there's no indication. It was not contained in the order paper of last Friday. So we know that this whole week from now to the 18th, when this week's business is dispensed with, there will be no message on the state of the nation. So it's clear that there's paralysis. There's no government business. There are a number of key constitutional requirements that continue to be in abeyance. And it's not too clear exactly why we are witnessing this, if you like, unprecedented paralysis.
Thankfully, we have Habib Idris, the Deputy Majority Whip. Mr. Habib Idris, I'm grateful that you could join us. Am I right to say that you're a member of the Business Committee? Hello, Mr. Habib Idris.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct.
Yes, that's correct. I'm
Okay.
a member of the business. Yes.
Before we even go into the specifics, do we know when the president will be delivering his state to the nation? Because it's true, if we check the records, this is possibly the latest time, and we still don't have any clarity yet on when we are in March, middle of March, and we still have no clarity yet when the state of the nation will be delivered. What's happening?
Yes, thank you, and good evening to your viewers. In fact, I think the president is within the law. If you look at the Constitution in Article 67, it says that the president shall, at the beginning of each session of Parliament and before the dissolution of Parliament. It's not the fact that the president have breached any constitutional, provisions in terms of the delivery of the State of the Nation address. And let me put it on record that I am the chairman of the President's State of the Nation Address Committee in Parliament. I chaired that committee. The last time we had a meeting, we had agreed that the president was going to deliver the State of the Nation address on the 3rd of March. But due to further consultation, we realized that the 5th March, which is the Independent Day of Ghana, was also of a very important day to the Republic. So doing the State of the Nation, or the message on the State of the Nation, on the 3rd, and then on the 5th also doing the 5th March, was something that was not good. So our committee then advised, and I chaired the committee, like I rightly said, that it is not in a good idea for us to have the State of the Nation address on the 3rd of March, and then also coming to have the 5th March on the 3 days after, so that the president message on the nation could actually be able to sink. We will meet again to be able to fix a date for it. But I want to make it known, and then we need to understand
sorry,
that
forgive
Parliament
me. Yeah, forgive me. I'll come to that. But just for clarity, you mentioned that the reason why you advised that he postponed was because of the 6th of March comment, 6th of March.
Yes.
But we've always had 6th of March. So why didn't you do it before? Because normally the State of the Nation would have come before the 6th of March.
There was other government engagement that could not be done. And like I rightly said, in Article 67, the president is still within the law. The president is not binding to just put it, I'm supposed to do it tomorrow or tomorrow next. And it is the message on the nation. So when the president deems it fit and within the law, the president will definitely address the nation on that. And our committee, we have put in all our arrangement on in place. We have communicated to those who are involved, and when the president and the government is ready to deliver the state of the nation, it will be done. But we should not make it look like or try to argue that it is within or is outside the parameters of the law. It is still within the law, the beginning of the session to the dissolution of parliament. So at any time, the president can come and address the nation. For the fact that he has been done earlier in previous state of the nation doesn't mean that if this one come on a later date, it is against the law. No, that's not the right.
Okay, now let's move on.
And I wanted to also make issues. When my colleague, Honorable Ablakwa, was making his comment,
Mr. Habib Idris?
In terms of moving of a business and other things, it means that Parliament is not doing its job. What I want to put on record is that committee works are going on. Majority of whatever you see on the order paper come from the committee sittings. The business committee, of which I am a member, we program the business of the week. That has to do with questions, that has to do with statements, that has to do with motions and other bills that are coming up. But if you look at the previous week, and you see when they raised the last week, we were actually making argument on this issue with regards to the order 48, that is forming a quorum, of which you realize that when the count was done, we had only 42 members of parliament who were present. That was about 50 short of the number to form a quorum. But the next day, when we were looking at the vote and proceedings of the previous day, we realized that about 118 members were present. So it means, and other members were even present and was marked absent. So it means that other members will come and then sign in or sit for a time before the quorum issue was raised. They move to committee sittings, and when the issue of quorum is raised, then it becomes a problem. I remember that day very well. I was actually leading government business that day when the issue raised by Honorable Mutala on quorum count. At the end of the day, I was actually marked absent, but we were 42. But the next day on the vote and proceedings, we were 108. And business have been questions members. And ministers of state have been invited to answer questions, which is business of members of parliament and that of the government. Statement of important events and statements that are necessary for our democracy have been done. We have done laying of papers. Papers have been laid. We have this trust fund.
Okay, we have a slight challenge with this connection there. We'll get him back because there are some fundamental facts that still needs addressing. I mean, how does he, for example, explain the repetitions that you see on the order paper? Some of them have been on it since the 25th of January, when Parliament indeed returned from their break, and they are still on the order paper as of last Friday, which means there has been no movement at all on them. And some of them includes a simple second reading of bills, right? So that's just proper government business in Parliament. We'll get him to explain that very shortly. But let me bring in Dr. Rashid Rahman. Yes, Mr. Habib, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was asking you.
I was making the point that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was asking you. I mean, you make the point that as far as you're concerned, government business is still happening. But how do you explain, if you check the order paper, because you're a member of the business committee, if you check the order paper, we have business that had been scheduled, that was scheduled on the 25th of March, and not just one, several of them, as I indicated. If you check on the 11th, on the 25th of January, when you returned, if you check on the 11th of March, the last day of record, you still have them on the order paper. That they have no movement at all on them. And some of them include second reading of bills. That shows that there's definitely a problem there with doing proper business in the House.
Yes, like I said, the business committee, as you rightly put it, we schedule the business of the NCUN week. And when we bring motions, for example, like the motion Honorable Ablakwa said, of which he is part of the sponsors of the motion in terms of the recruitment, happening of the recruitment agencies or security agencies. The motion is on the order paper. We are not to move the motion. They are to move the motion. So when motion has been programmed for it to be done, the speaker called for it, or when we go for at the conclave for leadership to discuss, their leaders are there. So if they are ready to move the motion, they will be ready to move the motion. That's the same thing that happened when they wanted to talk about the investigation on the COVID related expenditure.
But Mr. Habib, apart from motions, I understand the motion argument, but apart from motions, how do you explain second reading of bill, Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2021? It was there on the 24th. You put it there on the 25th of January. On the 11th of March, word for word, it's still there.
What happened on that one has to do with the fact that there was supposed to be a restitution be done by the majority leader. When the majority leader do the rescission, then the finance committee chairman and that of the ranking be in the for them to be able to move ahead. It hasn't been read. The chairman need to be.
Okay. We'll try and get him back on a more stable line there. Let me bring in Dr. Draman whilst we try and get him on a more stable line. Dr. Draman, I mean, the facts speak for themselves, and he was just explaining some of them. He talks about the motion. I think for the motions, you understand that the speaker will have to admit and have to be moved. But apart from the motions, there are second readings of bill, for example, that has been there since they returned from the break. You have other very important matters, as I indicated. For example, the 40-bed hospital. They had to do, there was a decision that had to be taken on it. They haven't done it. The adoption of report from the finance committee, they haven't done it. And it's been repeated almost every single day for the last 2 weeks. I mean, do you have any concern at all about this, to the extent that last week Parliament had to adjourn because they didn't have quorum?
Yes, indeed, Evans. Good evening to the honorable members and Professor Abdullahi and all your viewers. Certainly, some very serious concerns. I think the framers of our constitution, as well as maybe all other constitutions around the world, regarding the role that a parliament has to play, is within the framework of, the fact that there is no job that is more important than governing a country. And MPs, I think, are very central to this, in the fact that they have to show up in the House, represent the interests and the will of the people that elected them. And they do this through oversight work that they have to do. They do this through the lawmaking work that they have to do. Now, if we look at what is happening now, and maybe even if we go back a few parliaments ago, I'm very disturbed that, we are not seeing a united parliament. We are not seeing MPs from both sides of the aisle uniting to say the executive needs to take parliament very seriously. That's the first point. The second point, Evans, is this, that, if you look at what is happening, the fact that many MPs do not show up in the House. Honorable Okujita Blackwell is here. He has raised the issue several times. We have seen it. You guys brought it, to our screens. We saw the 41 people who were there, whether, it's fact or fiction. At least we all had eyes who could see inside the House. For me, the disturbing message is that I don't know whether our MPs are not measuring the kind of images that are coming out of Parliament against the perception that citizens of this country have of Parliament. If you look at the latest Afrobarometer data, trust in Parliament has gone down by 12 percentage points in the last 10 years. And then if you look at, the institutions that citizens trust, the military is number one, followed by religious leaders, the president, and parliament is behind all these institutions. And then you look at the issues of corruption. Parliament is the number 3 institution that is perceived by citizens to be the most corrupt, behind the police, judges, and magistrates. So, Evans, if you put all these things together, I think this should give some cause for our MPs to be very worried from both sides of the aisle, that the business of governing a country, which is one of the most important jobs that anyone can have, must be taken very seriously by all our MPs.
Yeah, I mean, let me bring your colleague, Professor David Abdullah, into the conversation. Doc, I mean, you were senior advisor at the African Parliamentary Networks Against Corruption. I mean, what we've seen, we've heard, Habib Idrisu's explanations why the business of the House hasn't been done. He explained why the president has not spoken yet, but the State of the Nation is still within the law. You watch what is unfolding. First of all, if you watch Parliament, is what we are witnessing a result of the hung Parliament, or a result of, what's your best guess, or a result of the gridlock and the malaise that has been brought on by the lack of movement on arguably one of the government businesses since last year, which is the e-levy? Is it a result of that because there hasn't been any movement and there's a gridlock, sort of Parliament is breaking out at the seams at doing other business as well?
Yes. Thank you, Evans, and good evening to my fellow panelists and to your viewing public. I would contend that actually the 8th Parliament, because of the fact that it's a hung Parliament, attendance have rather been very good compared to previous times. However, the issue of lack of quorum to be able to undertake government business is, like you said, exactly because of the e-levy impasse. Now, what it has done is it has divided the Parliament between the majority and the minority in Parliament, and each has taken a stand. Now, when that happens, you begin to see that some people lose the enthusiasm or even the willingness to collaborate. And we know that the business of Parliament is the business of the people. When there's not that enthusiasm to collaborate, when there's that people, each party taking a stand, then it becomes difficult. And it is not even easy for some people to come to Parliament because they know that there could be an impasse. And I think, like you said, that is one of the most important challenges. However, I also look at the fact that the other issue is, like it was mentioned, some of the MPs actually smuggle their names into the attendance sheet.
Yeah.
And I think moving forward, what could be done is, in this digital era, you can have people use, the digital thumbprint when they sign in, and then at the end of the proceedings, they could also do the same thing, so that at least it might be able to check those that do not turn up.
Do we have Habib Idris back? Okay.
Yes, I'm here, Evans.
Okay, Dr. Habib Idris, I mean, let me ask that question that Professor Abdullah just raised. Why really is it that we are seeing this inability to do some of the key businesses that you've tabled, that we've seen so many repetitions since 25th? You explain why the president is not speaking yet on the State of the Nation. You've explained that. But why do we have so many of this business that you've scheduled still unable to be dealt with on the floor?
Yes, Evans, if you look at previous 6th Parliament, 7th Parliament, up to the 8th Parliament. This is not like something that is new in terms of parliamentary procedure. The fact that if a motion is repeated in an order on an order paper, meaning that people are not there for us to be able to do business. Probably it could be that committees are still doing work for some of the reports to actually be able to be tabled. I can quite remember that my colleague, Honorable Ablakwa, was talking about the incident on the WA issue, of which the Defense and Interior Committee supposed to bring in a report. It has come onto the motion paper twice, but the committee was actually still working for that to bring the report. Some of the motions are such that when they appear on the order paper, it is either that it is being read and referred to the committee for report to be brought to the preliminary. So when such things happen, you see that it continues to appear on the order paper until the committee finish its work, and then we can now it our work. Like you could see that now the LGBTQ is also back. Members of parliament come into the chamber, they do one or two business, and they move to the committee to continue what actually do. Government business haven't been able to government, whatever had been programmed on the other people for us to move, have always moved.
We've lost him. Then let me bring Okujoto Ablakwa into this. Mr. Okujoto Ablakwa, we heard Dr. Abulai mentioned that part of the problem is the e-levy. What's your own reading? Is it the case that this gridlock and the paralysis may have been brought on by the outcome of the e-levy, which is still, you know, it's a mystery as to what is going to happen with the e-levy, and the fact that there's no consensus on this? Has that affected the way Parliament does its work now?
I would say it is a fair assessment, and if you consider the fact that you have a good number of MPs who are also ministers accompanying the finance minister across the length and breadth of this country, holding town hall meetings, trying to get the people of Ghana to appreciate their perspective and to come along on the e-levy at a time that Parliament is sitting and sometimes struggling to get a quorum. And yet when probably meetings are adjourned and we look at the news for the day, you bring to us, you know, footage from those town halls, and we see quite a good number of our colleagues who are also ministers of state accompanying the finance minister on those, you know, town halls across the country. It tells you that government itself seems to have a priority, a certain fixation on the e-levy. They think that for now, all other things can wait. And that is clearly a contributing factor. And that's why, I mean, Parliament, you know, has been made to bear the brunt. Look, I will continue to be an optimist that this hung Parliament presents an opportunity for Parliament to assert itself, particularly the history that this hung Parliament made to have a speaker who is not from the president's party. I think that we have not really tapped into that potential fully. Yes, I agree that government drives government business, but looking at how government itself has been lethargic, government has just a one-item priority, so much fixation on the e-levy, when there are so many other things to look at. Look, I've been reading the population and housing census copiously. We must be worried about youth unemployment, which has almost tripled. More than 1.5 million of our youth are unemployed. The last time a census was done in 2010, it was hovering around 5%. Now it is 13.4%. We must be concerned about that. The age category of 15 to 24-year-olds is about 38%. If you look at the number of our people in abject poverty who are living in ramshackle structures, wooden structures, metal structures, those are the matters that must engage us, you know, and we are having all of these matters put at the back burner. Nobody is giving them attention at all. And the whole fixation has been on e-levy. Even the security situation in the sub-region. As ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I am deeply frightened. I mean, Burkina Faso is gone. Mali is gone. You have these violent extremists, these terrorists. How are we coming together in a bipartisan effort to retool our security services to make sure that they stand in readiness to protect all of us? So there are major issues. Look, the conflict in Ukraine, that invasion, and what it's doing to the global economy, what the security implications. You had the Russians helping us, the Wagner group. You have Ukraine sending troops to Mali, Sudan. The food security implications. Ukraine is one of the major suppliers of wheat. We should be discussing all of these matters and how strategically we can position our country to, as it were, minimize the impact. All of these things are just lost on us, and the whole fixation has been e-levy. So I think that the time has come for the Right Honourable Speaker to assert his authority. Yes, the tradition has been that government takes the lead, government sets the agenda, government moves. Fortunately, in the area of private members' bill, we are seeing that this speaker, right from the Professor Michael Quay era, they have been more forward-looking about private members' agenda. I think that they should get bolder and they should just encourage members of parliament to set the agenda and let's move forward. At some point, I expect the government, the executive arm, to come along. But if we say we will wait, for now it's clear to me that the entire mindset, government seems to have the mindset that without e-levy, they can't do much. And that is drawing us back, holding the whole country to ransom. So we cannot continue that way.
Let's get some clarity from Habib Idris. Mr. Habib Idris, is that the case, that the e-levy has
far
paralyzed?
from that, in fact, if you look at the issue that he has actually raised, you will see that government is actually doing whatever it can to make sure that its business in the house move ahead. But it is not as a result of the e-levy. The e-levy just came on the latter part when the 2022 budget was presented. And when it was presented, government has actually engaged to be able to see how we'll be able to move the whole thing ahead. But looking at the business of the house, I am at a loss when my colleague Honorable Ablakwa said that we are concentrating on e-levy. What is it that government need to do that government is not doing now? That is the question.
Yeah, I mean, so that question is answered by what you find on your other paper, which the business you schedule. And as we've just discussed, there's so many of them that since January, and this is a chunk of them that have been repeated.
On the procedure in Parliament, and Honorable Ablakwa is aware. If you come to the other paper, you see a lot of things that you will not understand, and they keep repeating itself on the other paper. It doesn't mean that we are not tackling it. It means that majority of them are still at the committee level, of which we are waiting for the report of the committee to come back to the plenary.
No, but if that is the case, please explain to me. If that is the case, why do you then put it on the other paper when you know the committee is not done with the work?
For example, if you look at some of the issues, like he did mention about the war incident, it surfaced on the motion on the other paper, but the committee report itself was not ready. So it will be on the other paper, waiting for the committee to bring its report. And some of the motions, we put it in there in an attempt that the motion would be moved by the sponsors of the motion. But if you look at day in and day out, when we sit in Parliament, we have been able to take decisions. And you see, the day even the order 48 was raised, both on Thursday and on Friday, even the later part of Friday, you could see that even before adjournment, we laid about 7 papers that the chairman of the finance committee was there for us to be able to lay the papers. And moving forward, you could see the majority of the work that we are doing come from the committees. So if committees are still holed up in meetings and are not able to produce a report, you will see that some of these issues will continue to come.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe right parliamentary procedure then, should that process then change? If you know the committee is not done with its work, should you still schedule it on the other paper for business?
You see, the problem is that when committee report is ready, they don't actually tell you that, okay, our report is ready, put it in there. You can have the motion on the other paper, and you just even be seated in the chamber, then they will come and start to give you the report of the committee. Then you have to read the report, then it will move. Then it means that if it is not in the other paper already, it means that that committee report cannot be taken, or they have to come up with an other paper agenda, which is actually another form. But the practice in the House has always been the case that if you have motions, you repeat some of them, you repeat those motions to let you be aware that this motion is still within the premises of Parliament. For example, the motion Honorable Ablakwa have said, if we are not ready to take the motion and we don't bring it on the other paper at all, how will you know that this motion is still within Parliament for us to be able to take? It means that such things need to surface on the other paper so that we will know that it's within Parliament. And at any given time, when we have the numbers, the motion can be taken. The last time the motion, like I rightly said before, that has to do with the COVID-19 expenditure, it was surfacing on the other paper for more than 3-4 weeks. But the day we were ready to take it, Honorable Muntaka at Conclave said that, oh, they will move the motion today. And then the speaker was notified and the motion was taken. But when they were ready to take the motion, if it was not on the other paper, unless it is a serious government business, it has to come under an order.
So let me ask you, since you introduced the word serious government business, give me one serious government business, the one that falls in that category for you, that has been done since the 25th of March when you returned today?
Oh, a lot of them have been done. Like I told you, one of it is that at the moment we are at the consideration stage of the student trust, the loan part. We are just at the final stages of it. The minority on the other side have also been able to move their motion on the COVID expenditure that was thrown out. The other bills that have been properly that have been laid for first reading. Now we are back. The LBGT issues are also going on, and then any other issue that has to do with ministers coming to respond to important questions, which are serious government business. Honorable Ablakwa keep asking questions that is serious issues that are related to government. He keep raising concern that has to do with the expenditure of government in terms of private jet and other things. Sometimes I'm at a loss, and at the lighter note, I do have discussions, and I tell him that, look, it is not only President Akufo-Addo who has ever rented a private jet on a travel. President Mahama rented private jet before. There was a question in Parliament that has to do with that, and there was another counter question. So sometimes we need to be able to understand the work of Parliament, but not just to limit it to the fact that when we are at the preliminary, that is the only thing we do. In the morning, even before we come to the chamber on Thursday, every Thursday, we go for business committee meeting to plan before we come to the chamber, of which on Thursday, it will now then be presented for the House. And myself and Honorable Ablakwa, like he raised about issue of security in the country, we have actually,
I also want to zero in a problem with MPs absenting themselves. It's come up. Honorable Ablakwa had raised it. We counted 42 people last week in the chamber, and the House was adjourned. It's an issue. One return, I'll speak to Professor David Abdullahi about this, and also hear Rashid Dramani and Okujetu Ablakwa on where he is with his own attempt to get some resolution for some of the MPs he's isolated, and then get the thoughts of Habibu Drisu on dealing with this in a more sustainable way. Stay with me. It's live on PM Express, and let's go straight to the conversation about the MPs who simply not been coming into the House, the absenteeism question. We talked a lot, if you're just joining us, about tracking the work that Parliament has been doing over the last few weeks. The concerns are that indeed there is a lot there that Parliament can still do. You've heard Habibu Drisu insist that there is actually no problem there and that they're still doing government business. But let me bring Professor David Abdullahi. Prof, we know that MPs absenting themselves from the House, sometimes beyond the constitutionally stipulated 15 sittings, has become an issue. We still haven't dealt with it. In fact, as we speak, there is a petition before the Speaker that hasn't been dealt with yet. What's your suggestion on how this issue can be dealt with more substantively?
First, let me disagree with the Honorable Habib Adams. The repetition of government business on the order paper is because of absenteeism, which is contributing to the issue of the lack of quorum. And the Honorable Abulaka has just explained it in a very simple way. If some of their colleagues are part of the entourage with the finance minister trying to promote the e-levy, it is very simple. They cannot be in parliament at the same time. So for him to say the e-levy doesn't have a role to play in this absenteeism, to me, is not actually addressing the fact. Now, with the issue of those that have been away for parliament for a number of sittings and now have been need to be dealt with, I think it is important that it's taken as one of the solutions that is going to address the issue of absenteeism. I think what is interesting is that if somebody was saying that the electorate should punish them for not doing government business, I think that is far-fetched. It goes more than not just being in parliament. That is the issue of what people will punish the MPs for. But my issue is that we can use technology efficiently and effectively to make sure that we can make sure that these MPs are actually in parliament. I mean, there's no way that your biometric thumbprint would be the same as another MP. So you cannot have your name smuggled into the attendance sheet. You have to be there and until the end of the sitting. So that is one way I think it is important for us to be able to address this absenteeism. But also, I mean, our MPs should understand that they are voted into parliament to do business of the people. At the end of the day, they are not representing themselves. And it is important that we get it clearly for them to understand that it is their duty to always be there, unless they are out, in their constituencies dealing with other issues, which they do. But at least for not showing up just because they don't feel like it, then I think it is very, very important for us to address.
Mr. Blacko, I know you had raised this issue with 4, if I'm not mistaken, 3 MPP MPs. Have you taken a decision on what you want to do on those particular names that you put in the public domain?
Yes, I served notice last week in Parliament that I will be bringing an application before the Right Honourable Speaker for the House to take action on this matter under the constitutional provision, Article 97(1)(c), which is very, very clear. There's no ambiguity about it. It says that a member of Parliament shall vacate his seat in Parliament. C, if he is absent without the permission in writing of the Speaker and is unable to offer a reasonable explanation to the Parliamentary Committee on Privileges for 15 sittings of a meeting of Parliament during any period that Parliament has been summoned to meet and continues to meet. Clear provision. We have done the research. We've looked at all the votes and proceedings. It's clear that there are 3 members of Parliament who have questions to answer. And I take the view that this culture of absenteeism is continuing because we have not really exacted sanctions. We have not held members of Parliament accountable. Look, throughout the life of this Fourth Republic, is only once in the case of the Honorable Amwati. Even that, the Privileges Committee had met and given him virtually a carte blanche that he could absent himself in perpetuity until such a time that he returns. It was only when it became clear that the courts in the United States of America will convict him that we then had to reconsider the stance that the House took, and then Professor Kweku Azar's case in 2008
went to the Supreme Court,
went to the High Court, disagreed with the position the Privilege Committee took. So Parliament itself, must accept its authority. We must have a zero tolerance policy for absenteeism. And if I can quickly add, that I disagree with the Honorable Habib when he says that a lot of the things you are seeing on the the business statement at committee. I totally disagree. Once the matter is been programmed, it means that it is ready. Look, on the business statement, you have the Sputnik V vote. The bipartisan committee of inquiry is done with its work. It submitted its report. We must take that vote on the fate of the health minister, the Honorable Kwekwa Jimameni. Look, a key reason why important government business is not coming is because our colleagues don't have the numbers. They can't find the Honorable Ajasafo. The Honorable Kodokum is not doing too well.
I'm grateful. Unfortunately, run out of time.
Vote, they are not bringing important matters. E-levy, for example.
Yeah, in fact, on that e-levy subject, if Habib is on, Habib, just a word. When is the e-levy going to be programmed? Is it this week?
The e-levy will be programmed when government is ready to take the e-levy.
Okay.
And when government is ready, the e-levy will be programmed and be passed. And I must put it on record that the issue that has to do with Article 97, it is not cast on stone.
Okay, well, I mean, that definitely is one of those issues that we can litigate here. I'm sure it will come to the floor, as Okudito Blakwa said we'll do, and then we'll hear the debate as it unfolds. But gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.